What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Crown Jewels, a journey through Queen. I'm your host, PLD, on the PLD Projects Network. And this, my friends, is a song. A very good song, one of my favorite of all times. I'm not sure where it goes in my rankings yet. We will get there, but we have a lot to do beforehand. Here we do on Crown Jewels as we go through every song in the Queen catalog and the solo catalogs, and we listen to all the different versions that are out there, the studio version, the single version, the remix, the live version, the edit, the redo, the solo version, all that stuff, and we try to find out which version is the crown jewel of each song as we create our multiple playlists to make the ultimate Queen playlists. We've gone through the first album. We are into the second album, towards the end of the second album, actually. And let's just get into this particular track. This is March of the Black Queen. It is on Queen 2, towards the end of Queen 2, like I said before. Now it's on Side Black, which I've mentioned if you've listened before. Side Black was kind of mostly done as a medley. It kind of goes from one song right into the other, right into the other. It's good. It's kind of cool. The Beatles used to do that. I think it's a very cool thing for them to do. It does make it a little difficult trying to intersplice and take just one track at a time. But let's see what we can do. This track, like all of Side Black, was written by Freddie Mercury. You got Freddie Mercury on lead vocals, backing vocals, piano. You got Brian May on guitars, Tubular Bells, backing vocals. You got John Deacon on bass guitar, Roger Taylor on backing vocals, drums, and lead vocals, which we'll get to in a second. Roy Thomas Baker, the producer, actually played some castanets at one point, so that's where we are on that. A few notes now before we take a listen ourselves. This song is the next step in the line to Bohemian Rhapsody. I mentioned this before on Queen 1. I considered My Fairy King to be that first step. This is that next step as we go through it. Continues with some tempo shifts here. There's some ballad moments, there's some rock moments, genre shifting kind of stuff. It's a very epic song. I will say also Roger does get that lead vocal credit in here because he sings one line, which you're going to hear. You can point it out to me afterwards. We'll listen to it. I'll tell you about it afterwards. This is a song that was never fully performed live, but they did perform the rock section of it during one of their famous Queen medleys, as they used to do through 1976. A lot of times they would put 3 or 4 songs together in a quick fashion. They performed snippets of it, like maybe a minute of it. In this case, they usually just did the rock section of it, and then they would go on to the next song or whatever in the medley. Although every once in a while, Freddie did quote it on piano. And I mean, I know as late as 1984, there were a couple of times where he played the melody a little bit, but never really fully performed live because it's such a genre shifting type song. It's kind of sad though. I wish we could have seen this done live because it would have been quite the feat. The song does take a bit of a segue, like I mentioned before, from Nevermore, but the separation isn't so jarring in this one because it did kind of have a song ending, goes right into a nice little piano opening. The ending is a bit abrupt though, as it goes straight into Funny How Love Is. There is a fix for that. We'll talk about that when we get into some of the alternate versions, of course. Or, you know what, we could actually just do that right now because that's what it's time for. We'll talk about the alternative released versions. We have a version that was on a album called Deep Cuts Volume 1. When the band had their 40th anniversary in 2011, the record company put out 3 Deep Cuts versions, which is basically compilations of the non-singles, or some of the ones try to get listeners into more of the album base instead of the usual greatest hits type stuff. March of the Black Queen was put on this Deep Cuts album without going into Funny How Love Is. So they really only take the backing part of March of the Black Queen, and we end with this big angelic choir. As it were. I did put that link into the description below. I'm not going to do the usual listen and come back and tell you because that's really the only difference. But if you are looking for a standalone version that you want to put in your mixes or your playlist somewhere, that's the way to go. The other ones I will mention for alternative release versions, I should mention the BBC session. This was played on the BBC as if it were re-recorded for BBC session number 4. But if you ever see a version that says it's the BBC session, yeah, don't believe it because it's not. Yes, they used the album version for the BBC. Those are the released versions. Now we go into the unreleased version. There's only one that we know of. It's called Takes 3 through 5. Greg Brooks played them at the Queen Convention. Greg Brooks is the Queen archivist, as he calls himself. He plays a lot of demos at these conventions, covers them with a hideous property of Queen Productions so that Queen fans won't take them and either profit from them or leak it out there. A lot of times they do get leaked out, but with that obviously that he has covered. It's not something that they could really sink their teeth into. And obviously, he'd like to hear a real solid version of this release on CD or something, or a download later on, and some kind of anthology version. That would be great. We don't get that, unfortunately. We only have takes 3 through 5. But interestingly enough, I couldn't find a YouTube link for this one. I only found a YouTube link for about a minute's worth of it. I have a full 6-minute version I've heard. So I'll talk about that, and I'll give you the link for the 1-minute version so you can get a feel for what I'm talking about at least. It's still very interesting to listen to, at least for once. I'll tell you right now, I can't think of any convention demo I'm ever going to really put on a playlist because the covering and the audio quality is awful. So I wouldn't want to do that, really. But it is interesting, and it is worth discussion on this podcast, so that's what we'll do there. And finally, the officially released version from the Rainbow, March of 1974. Like I mentioned before, it's part of the medley. It's only about a minute-long snippet, and that's all there is to it. So we have to listen to that, though, as well. A few quotes before I get into that first listen. From Freddie Mercury in 1977, those were the days of the 16-track studios. Before, when we did so many overdubs on 16-track, it was like we just kept piling it on and on. The tape went transparent because it just couldn't take anymore. I think it snapped in 2 places as well. Roger Taylor added, we lasted recording that one until the tape went transparent, genuinely. Similarly, John Deacon said, we spent ages and ages rehearsing this one. Not very easy at all, I can assure you. Well, those are the quotes from the 3 of the band members. Let's get into that, listening to that version now. The first version, it's one that's on Queen 2, down in the description below. So hit pause here, listen, and come right back. Whew! What an epic song, huh? What an epic song. I really love that one. Let's begin there. It starts with a nice piano opening and goes right to a big choir right away. We don't get a whole lot of resting before we get into it. The first guitar trail we get to hear on our left side, I don't know about you, but it feels like it comes right out of Bohemian Rhapsody. Now, I know Bohemian Rhapsody comes later, so in a way, I guess I would say that Bo Rap took this from it, but it just feels like a very similar sound of the guitars on the left-hand side. Of course, there's a big riff of the bass drum. We start having this dueling choir on one side of our headphones, the guitar choir on the others. It's kind of a very big sonic sphere, and it's hard to really even tell what exactly is going on, but you know you like it. Freddie's vocals do the same thing. They start bouncing back and forth, just like they like to do. One line here on the right, one line on the left, one line in the middle. It's a very marching sound throughout. The drums really bring home the marching sounds, even through the different tempos and even through the different changes. Every once in a while, the drum will come back to bring you into this march of the Black Queen moments. You know what I'm trying to say there. Middle brings out some more piano. We get a little more when the Honey Child line comes into play. We get more marching drums, guitar bits again, both sides of the headphones. When it breaks into this different tempo at that point, where you get to hear the tubular bells coming in with some wandering vocals. And I love how that builds until there's suddenly silence. And then there's a soft piano and vocal moment. It's a voice from behind me. And it kind of gives them there. Instead of the great big choir harmonies, we get this very singular harmony from Freddie, a baritone that kind of rises into the more falsetto-y voice that he's got going on for the lead vocal. It's wonderful hearing Freddie harmonize with himself on a singular level. We get used to the big choir, but those singular ones can be just as touching and just as emotional. Of course, the marching does start to come back in not before long. The drums and the guitars start building up again, and then we get this big rock section, this big rock march. This is where the Roger line comes in. If you didn't hear it, it's when he said, "My life is in your hand, I'll foe and I'll fie." Start beating through. Freddie's voice is very, I don't want to say evil sounding, very commanding sounding, very royal, very dark. The guitar clips start moving, the piano's driving. John's bass, very subtle, but very melodious. But then it swings into this very positive moment before breaking down into what feels like it's going to be the end of the song. Again, it feels like a very Bohemian Rhapsody-like ending to a degree. It kind of starts down as a little trailing guitar part, nice piano part. But unlike Bohemian Rhapsody, there's no gong, it's a fake out. And we get this piano going again to riff to the very ending with this big triumphant finale, like I said, and it goes into Funny How Love Is in the album. The deep cuts version, you get the finale of just the choir, but it's a great song. It's got so much going on with it, so many different tempos, so many different feels. There's Freddie's soft, almost broken voice, and then there's the loud, powerful, in-command voice, all in the same song. It definitely takes you on a journey through the 6.5 minutes of the track. Really great. I can't wait to hear what you guys have to say about it. Let me know. Let me know how you feel about this song. Leave it in the comments. Leave it in the suggestions. I mean, whatever you want to say. I'd love to talk about it. But that's what we'll do for now. For now, that's the end of that version. Let's go into the next version. Like I said, I'm not going to listen to the deep cuts version. Feel free to go ahead and do it yourself. The next version we're going to listen to is the convention version, the alternate take convention version. Again, you have a minute, I have 6 minutes, but I'll come back and we'll talk just a little bit about it. I don't feel like there's going to be a big discussion about it, but at least give it a try. We'll come back.
Property of Queen Productions.
Well, there you have it. You got to listen to Take 3. I listened to Take 3 through 5. Definitely not something I listen to very often, but I will say the most interesting part about it is it's mainly Freddie and John. It's a lot of the basis of the bass and piano. You get to hear it without all the extra whistles and bells, quite literally tubular bells. But it's kind of interesting to hear just those versions. It's kind of humorous as well. And there's one thing, if you ever do listen to the complete version, Freddie ends and just makes a mistake at one point, and goes, fuck. And like to me, when I used to record when I was younger, I did the same thing. I'd have a piano going, and I'd go have this great take going, and all of a sudden I'd hit a clunker during recording, and all you'd hear me go, God damn it. Or like my dad would walk in the room like, Dad, I'm trying to record. It's all silly stuff at the time. So it is an interesting one-time recording. Not going to put it in the playlist, of course, and I will rank it dead last for that reason, but it is a interesting case nonetheless. All right, let's go on to the live version, live from the Rainbow March of 1974. I roll with my left hand, I roll with my right. All right, there you have it. Not so much played, although it's interesting what they do play. They extend out the beginning of the rock version for a little bit before they really break into the actual song. And the vocals you do get are basically Freddie's rock vocals. Interesting note always, I always find during the live versions, whatever, Roger would wait an extra measure or so before coming in. He'd go from, in the album version, he'd go right from Freddie's line right to his line. In this version, the live version, he tended to wait for Freddie to line, he'd riff another measure, and then go into his track. I don't know if it was getting him ready or if he wasn't quite ready to do it right away. I'm not sure what it was, but it was something he did quite often. So there must have been some reason why he did it. Maybe that's just how he felt comfortable. Maybe he just took that extra beat to get ready and go into it. I don't know. But it's cool. It was always a great part to hear of them in the medley. I do wish we had a full version, but hey, them's the breaks, right? That's all you can do. So here we go. We are here at the end of the episode. We get to decide which is the crown jewel, what is the ranking, and does it crack my top 10? Well, the crown jewel is pretty easy. I made a decision. I know last week I definitely did rank the early take, the convention version of Nevermore, and I ranked it dead last. I think I'm always going to rank them dead last, so why should I even bother to rank them anymore? I will always bring them up, and if there's a YouTube video, I'll try to direct you to there so you can hear it, because they are usually interesting outtakes, but because of the sound quality and usually the property of Queen Productions, I'm never going to put them in a playlist. So I will never rank them, but I will talk about them. So this week, that means we have two versions, really. Two versions. Either the album version / Deep Cuts version, which I'm going to take as one version for the most part, and the Rainbow March of 1974. In this case, it's pretty easy. I'm going to rank the Rainbow version second, just because it's a snippet. It's only a minute and a half of the song. You don't get any of the great tempo shifts, genre shifting, choir sounding. It's nothing like that at all. It's all just a really big part of a medley. So you got to go with the album version of The Crown Jewel, don't you? I don't think there's any real discussion here. If you think better, want to give me the Rainbow version and tell me why in the comments, go right ahead. I do want one small caveat. I'm going to say the album version because I kind of believe, knowing what's coming up next, the track Funny How Love Is, I'm most likely going to go with the album version there. There's not many different versions. A lot of them are basically, it's a convention version. There's also some single edits and things like that. But if I do go with a different version of the alternative, an alternative version of Funny How Love Is, then I will retroactively come back and put the deep cut version in my playlist just so it doesn't... so it gels a little better as far as going between tracks. If I do pick the album version for Funny How Love Is, I'll keep this album version because then they'll just go right together. All right? So, what is my ranking of this track? What number? On 1 to 11, because we always go to 11 here on PLD Projects. This is an easy one for me. This is straight in as an 11. It's one of my favorite songs of all time. I do love it. I can listen to it nonstop and never really get bored with it. I get some people could think it's a little too much. The Freddie lyrics are definitely mythologically based. It's about his his childhood fantasy, Kingdom of Rye, things of that nature. So I can see why you wouldn't, but I always come back to it because it's a musical journey, and I love that about Freddie and Queen. So it's going to be it's going to be at 11. Now, where does it fall in my top 10 rankings then? Well, it's the second number 11, so it bounces Nevermore out of the top 10. That means we got Doing All Right at number 10, Going Back at number 9, The Fairyfeller's Masterstroke at number 8, Father to Son at number 7, Ogre Battle at number 6, Liar at number 5, Great King Rat at number 4, My Fairy King at number 3, The March of the Black Queen at number 2, because it's just not quite White Queen as it began for me. White Queen as it began, still my favorite by a smidge, but it's kind of amusing that it's White Queen and The March of the Black Queen are my two top favorite tracks at this moment. Well, there we go, folks. That's the end of the episode this week. I want to thank you all for joining me. I want you to come next week for Funny How Love Is, the penultimate proper track on Queen 2. The week following will be the first big single from the boys, the actual Seven Seas of Rye track, not the one we talked about on Queen 1, not the Seven Seas of Rye's Ellipsis. This is just the full-on the Seven Seas of Rye. But first, Funny How Love Is. Thank you all so much for joining me here on the PLD Project. If you want to help out the project, please subscribe, leave comments, or you can join us on Patreon, patreon.com/PLD Projects. We have a great Facebook chat going. We do a lot of extra content, do some hangouts per month, and let you guys talk about all sorts of things, whether it be movies, music, anything like that. Again, patreon.com/PLD Projects. You can join the likes of Danielle Ramirez, Brandon Buckingham, Brandy Parker, Jeff Alterman, John Lastrina, and Kelly W., and more. I really appreciate you guys for helping me keep the lights on. And of course, if you're listening to PLD Projects, listen to all of my projects, all the things I talk about. I got Class Action, which is now going to be done on audio as well. You can find that on the PLD Project YouTube channel, just like you can find this Crown Jewels on the YouTube channel now. I'm actually going to bring everything from audio over to the visual side, and everything from the visual side over to the audio side. So we got Crown Jewels, we got Class Action, and now we also have Two Mediocre White Dudes on Film. Myself and PJ Campbell just finished up the Halloween franchise. Not sure what we're doing next. We'll get back to you there. But until next time, God save the Queen, everybody. Keep rocking.